All right, everyone, it's Dave Mormon here with Home Service Business Coach, and I have a special guest for today's episode on not just the podcast, but also YouTube. I've got Jersey here from Window Cleaning Resource. My man, how are we doing this fine Friday?
I'm doing amazingly. I'm ready for spring. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, man, you guys must be getting pretty busy with everybody getting busy for cleaning, and I'm sure you guys have been extremely busy the last few weeks.
Yeah. So because we ship worldwide, but nationwide, US is really our market. But there's people in Texas and Florida. They all start way earlier than, say, the New York and Maine and, Wisconsin and all those places. So we start our seasons a little bit longer than the average person's. But it starts to flood across the country.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Jersey, it's the first time you're on my show here, man, and I know you've got a killer podcast of your own, which we'll link up in the show notes for everybody for even more content. But let's just start at the beginning, man. Who is Jersey, and kind of what's been your journey in a nutshell up to this point where you're at?
Yeah, so I started a window cleaning business. And this is back in the day when there was no forums, there was nothing. I mean, WaterFed wasn't even barely on the market yet. But I ran that for 16 years and I actually decided to move south. And when I did, I sold my company to my operations officer, which was an awesome, like, high five, transfer the deed, done deal. I consulted for his company for 4 years. That was part of the buyout. And then the time I moved here, I started another company and had it for a whole whopping year before I realized it was just too much stuff to do the consulting for that company. And then I started doing sales for WCR, and I was doing live chat, and then I was trying to do another company. So I kind of picked what I was going to do and went into WCR and doing sales. And that's kind of where we are now. I've been doing that now for 8 years, I think. I've been doing sales for them. I've known those guys forever. I was actually the first person to ever sign up for their forum, which was 15 years ago. But I've known the guys forever. I've been in the industry, kind of like you said, content and everything. And then 2 years ago, I bought American Window Cleaner magazine to add to more content, and that's got us where we are now.
Amazing, man. I feel like you guys have the best domain. Is it windowcleaner.com? Is that you guys' domain?
Yeah, so Window Cleaner in every platform is us. So Instagram, Window Cleaner is us, TikTok, everything. So we've spent time and money getting those domains from different people just so it would be as clear cut across the board as we can. So
yeah. No, man, that's amazing. Before we get into much of what WCR is doing, I want to track back a little bit in your story in entrepreneurship. We got a big listener base, Jersey, that is like owner operator, maybe doing, $100,000 to $200,000 in sales. And I know these are the dudes and the girls that buy from you guys. So tell us maybe a little bit of that, of that struggle in entrepreneurship. Because I think sometimes we hear these shows and everyone, grows their business and makes a whole bunch of money, but that's not always the case. So maybe tell us, like, all the way back to your story of maybe like a tough time or a tough lesson that you learned in entrepreneurship, because we try to keep it like pretty real on this show, man. So I'd love to hear maybe a challenge you had and kind of how you worked through that. And then we'll dig into the meat and potatoes at WCR.
Yeah. Social media sucks. I'm just going to start with saying that because it's a highlight reel for everybody. Everybody who's on there is like, hey, I just got this $16,000 check. Boom, look at, and they didn't say like, oh yeah, by the way, I needed to borrow money to make payroll over the winter. Like it puts out there. And then the problem is that everybody compares themselves to everybody else. Well, no one's jumping on Facebook like, just had the stomach flu for 2 days. And like the negative's not out there. So you can't compare yourself to anybody else. So wherever position anybody's in, that's the position that they need to just focus on what they are now from where they are last year. And if there's growth in you, that's exactly what you need to do. There is no right or wrong way to do business. But as far as lessons go, I don't think that you have a long enough podcast to tell you all the lessons I've learned. But yeah, I've had those lessons that kind of gave me business PTSD, right? Where I had in my second year, I had it's third year. I'm sorry. I went to my accountant, and it was a friend of a friend, one of those deals, for $50, she did my taxes. And I went in there and she said, wow, you guys did really good. I said, yeah, thank you. Well, this was the Friday before tax day was on a Monday. And she goes, oh, and I didn't quite understand that the tax lady telling you you did good was a bad thing. But she said we ended up owing all this money, and it was one of the largest sums of money I'd ever had to pay for anything up to this point in my life. And I had 2 days to come up with it, and ended up, I couldn't make payroll. I couldn't do anything. I didn't even have the funds. So I had to go and like we said, borrow money and actually be able to pay for everything, and kind of put myself in a bit of an issue where I learned a great lesson from it, but that was one of the ones that I really, really remember. And there's been a lot of times of hair pulling and sadness and trying to just kind of keep everything together, but
Yeah.
kind of gets you to where you are.
Yeah, man. I love that quote of like choosing your hard. I think like the owner operators on the truck, it's hard because you're doing the work and you don't have it's more of a job and self-employed lifestyle. But then also the business owners that, more scale up and grow a company, there's stress that comes with employees and taxes and payroll and growth pains. And so I think in business, man, what I've seen is you just need to choose your heart and choose your path and say, hey, this is the journey I'm going to go down for the next, X amount of years. And I think it should be years, if not decades, and have this like long view in business. So it's not easy, man, running your own business. That's for sure.
Well, and there's no wrong way about business. That's the cool thing. Like how you do business, there's people out there who, hey man, I like capped 150 grand I make a year, and I do it myself. I don't have a helper. I don't like, when you make $1, you make $1. And then there's another guy out there who wants to have, well, I got to hit that $1 million mark. I want to have 10 trucks and that's right too. But I'm telling you, when you get that big, they're not, every dollar they make, they're not making, but different stresses come with different things. Different valuations of companies come with different things. If you're a solo owner operator guy and you go to sell your business, you're selling somebody a job. So your profit on business is going to be less than the guy that has 10 trucks out there. So pros and cons of everything, but doesn't mean anything's right or wrong.
Yeah, man, let's go one step deeper. What kind of structure did you find work? You said you sold your company to your ops manager. So that tells me there was some more people other than Jersey. So tell me kind of what model did you find worked well for you? Because there's like sweet spots in business. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So there's a concept called saturation, which I think is in any business, any size, you have to kind of realize that side. And saturation is just this, that say one truck of 2 guys can do X amount of work before you have to get another truck, new guys, and it changes all your bills, right? So you have to get as efficient as possible with that one crew. So size isn't as much what matters as far as efficiencies. Because I know guys that have been doing, I literally know a company just under $3 million a year, and his profits on his company was like $16,000 for the whole year. Like at that point, your efficiencies are so off that who's working that hard with that many headaches for 16 grand? It just doesn't make sense. So when I ended up selling, I had 10 employees total. But then we had a couple of different divisions and the equipment and all that stuff. So for me, I kind of didn't hold myself back from growth, but I also didn't look to grow. I looked to strengthen. That was just kind of my goal. I wanted my guys to be able to make as much money as they could while not having 1,000 other things to worry about. So again, saturation and efficiency is what you need to work for in general. It's better than size.
Yeah, totally. What I found too, man, in working with a bunch of people in the industry is that owners tend to have more of either or, generally is more sales and marketing chops. Like you're better in front of the customer, maybe door knocking, driving growth. And then you've got more generally kind of an integrator who tends to be very operationally minded, good at the technical, but also a good leader. Did you find that in your journey that you were maybe one more side of the track and you had to kind of, I call it like getting professionally married to almost like your equal part? Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, I can tell you with 100% certainty that I did not want to be a window cleaner. Like that wasn't my goal. Where there's some people who are like, dude, I love window cleaning. I'm going to be a window cleaner. That's what I'm going to do forever. Even if I have 10 trucks on the road, I'm going to keep cleaning windows because I love it. That wasn't me. I wanted to have a business, and I just found that this was a great area to get into. So I hired my first person after one day, and it was a friend of mine who didn't have work, and it was just to basically have that kind of goal of getting out. And I was out of the truck probably within the first maybe year and a half when I hired my second employee then and had them doing it. And that was exactly it. That person that I hired, the second person, had to be the person who could run the entire crew.
Yeah.
And that's what I hired for. And he was, that was not the ops manager I ended up selling to, but he worked for me for 6 or 7 years. It was amazing. He ran the show up until that point. And that's why I hired him, is because he fit a spot that was really, really good that I lacked in. And that was that marriage you're talking about.
Yeah, no, man, that's so cool. So let's get in the weeds a little more, man. I want to know, you guys obviously work with a ton of cleaning business owners. Do you guys, is WCR just window cleaners, or do you have pressure washing gear as well and stuff?
Yeah, so sales wise, we sell 99.9% window cleaning stuff. We do have a couple things in the pressure washing line, but we also sell a lot to pressure washers who are getting into window cleaning.
Yeah.
But we don't sell pressure washers themselves.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of probably crossover with those two.
Yeah.
I know in my company we started with window and gutter cleaning and then added on the pressure washing, and it's been great, you know, to service existing customers. But what do you see working with a lot of these window cleaners? From you guys are like the suppliers, so why do you think, or what do you see are kind of the chokeholds in business, why people do? And I'm sure there's a numerous reasons, but what would be kind of like 1 or 2 or 3 where you're like, man, if I had to like sum this up, it would be A, B, and C that people tend to not last in this business, or you know, don't make it.
Yeah, it sounds stupid and cliche, but it's hustle. I've had so many people who are like, man, it's slow. Like I got nothing, man. And you're like, okay, well, what did you do yesterday? Like, man, I handed out like a couple door hangers, you know, and then I ended up having a dentist appointment, and yeah, I mean, just slow. And it's like, okay, well, work 8 hours on your job or your company, even if you don't have 8 hours of work, right? Like nobody can give you hustle. Nobody can teach you hustle. Nobody can write a book about how to get you to hustle. If you have it, you have it. If you don't, you don't. And the only person you have to blame for failure, in my opinion, is yourself. Because even if things hit the fan, or you don't have work, or you don't whatever, you can always work a little bit more towards that goal to kind of help yourself. So if anybody's struggling, step back and look at yourself and say, hey, is there anything else that I can do? Anything more that I can give to it?
Yeah, no, man, that's so good. I want to hear more on that. Because I completely agree. Do you think that hustle, where does that come from? Is that wired in from our upbringing? Can that be taught ever? Like, I'd like to hear a little more of your take on that.
Yeah. I think that it can be turned on. I really do. I know that it's hard for some people, but there's also a realization in window cleaning. It's $50 and you can be a window cleaner, right? So our cost of entry is extremely low. But if somebody gets into something, you go, oh, cool, this is fun, man. I made like $100 yesterday. This is great, right? At that point, they're not looking at it as a business. And at some point, a lot of companies go, whoa, wait, okay. If I did that, I can do $100 an hour. If I did 8 hours a day and I got this and I did this and I'm efficient, and I'm all of a sudden that part kicks in. And then to see that goal, that's how you get there. It's like throwing, you know, an address into the GPS. If I wanted to come visit you right now, I would have to put your address into my GPS. It would tell me step by step how to get there. But if I just said, I'm going to come visit you, and you never gave me your address, and I'm like, I'll make it there someday. That's where I want to go. Like,
yeah.
You're going to take so much time trying to figure it out if you don't have it all written out and planned.
100%, man. I'm curious to your story, how you started with hunger, with hustle. How did you get your first couple jobs? Like, let's go so granular to the entrepreneur listening, who literally just went to Home Depot and made that mistake. I know I did. You buy the cheap stuff and you're in business, right? So how did you get your first few jobs when you were getting this thing going?
Yeah. So I was confused. So when I started, like I said, there was no forums, there was no real way to kind of ask people like, hey, how do you do this? Or what do you do? So I just did a lot of things and tried to figure it out. And when it kicked in for me, I realized that if I was out there, if I was putting my name or telling people my name, if I somehow advertised, simple stuff too, if you got money or time, you have one or the other. If I'm putting my name out there on Craigslist ads, if I'm putting it out there on SEO and other pages, and I'm putting my name and my website on all this stuff, and I'm handing out brochures, thought every single person that is going to see my logo, see my name, see my services, every person eventually, I'm going to have 100,000 people that maybe know about me. Even if they don't remember me, they'll at least know about me once. So I just figured I just have to be everywhere. And in the beginning, for me, I'm not speak for everybody, but I had more time than money. There was a very early step part that I obviously didn't have enough money to do these giant EDDM campaigns and spend $750 a month on SEO and all this other stuff. So it was just getting out there. It was just putting it out there. And every piece of anything or any type of content that I put out there for the time was just one step kind of closer.
Yeah. No, man, that's so good. Did you ever go down the door knocking path when you got going, or was it mostly the flyers and the signs like you're saying?
Yeah, so door knocking, I still have an issue. I have a lot of people I talk to that like that. I don't like that necessarily kind of intrusive side, but I did a lot of door hangers. So
Yeah.
I found that if you buy really nice higher end door hangers, it's cheaper than if you go to, a place, and we could pay for color copies when I started, right? To age myself a little bit. So I would go and find the difference between them and then start split testing. And it was cheaper to do the really fancy ones, but it was a lower response rate on the fancy ones because they thought that I was expensive. If I went and did a canary yellow, black, and white copy and did the same thing, I would get a better response. So in the very beginning, I started figuring the kind of split testing thing. I didn't do door knocking, but I did door hangers, and that was kind of a little bit easier way to kind of get out there. But it was just another touch, basically.
No, it's so good. It can fire people up, the door knocking and the marketing, similar to how in the window cleaning, are you going water fed pole? Or are you going like traditional scrubber squeegee? It's like, I always like to say for people, they should do marketing that's congruent with their own value set, right? Like if you don't enjoy getting interrupted at the door, maybe you shouldn't do that for your company, right? And I think there's pros and cons to that piece for sure. But I think, man, to your point of like, marketing shouldn't just be this buffet, like a little bit. Like you went all in on door hangers. Like, were you doing like give us some numbers? Was it hundreds? Is it thousands? Did you hit the same neighborhood like 4 times? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I didn't have a lot of money to do giant things. So the more you buy of print products, obviously it's cheaper, but it was like 250, 500, or 1,000. I'm like, I'm going to do 1,000. And that's just like so many. That's 1,000 Pete. And I found out that by handing those out and giving my content to everybody that I ever ran into about anything, you tend to go through that fast. But out of 1,000, you're going to get some money back. And then that money just turns around and gets reinvested. And then you now have 2,500. You put those out, you make more money. And eventually you start making enough money that your reinvesting is lower than the amount you make. And then you get to keep some of it. So I just figured that the faster I could reinvest the money, the faster I could kind of get those new people coming in the door.
Yeah, no, man, it's so good. It's business is just such a game, isn't it? Of proving the concept initially, make a little bit, reinvest, go back in, go. It's just like it's like a slingshot almost. It's so fascinating.
Yeah. In the beginning too, I still remember I have my check still. I brought it when I moved, but my first check I ever got with my company, I still have it on my wall.
Wow.
And that was like one of those things where the first route job I ever got, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like I got this route job. Like they're going to pay me every 2 weeks to be like, I still remember that. I still remember my first house. I still remember the first comma sale, right? The first giant project where I did pressure washing houses, gutters, all that. And they paid me over $1,000. All that stuff gets you fired up to keep going because it's just new and it's exciting. And that's the game. That's what you're chasing. You're chasing that success, and success means different things, but however it is for you, that's your motivation.
No, man, it's so cool. Thank you for your honesty sharing. That's great. I want to transition, man, to WCR because I think the listeners have heard your story. You clearly have entrepreneurial skill sets. I'm curious, how do you weave that into be working in you guys have a freaking empire, man. Like, how did you plug that kind of small business sense and chops that you learned many years, running your cleaning business? How does that skill set translate into working for a larger company? Are they giving you, you're heading up sales. So I'd imagine you have a whole division that maybe you see as like your own business. I'm curious your mindset of that translation from small biz to WCR.
Yeah. So when I started with WCR on the kind of level that I did, I kind of have ownership in WCR as far as like how we've grown, how much we've grown, the size we are. When we first capped market share, when we became the largest supplier in the world for window cleaning supplies, like all these certain little things I felt like I kind of had a place in. And it's really cool because the business is awesome. WCR is great. We do, the fastest shipping and the easiest process, the nicest staff. We have all those. But the other side of it is I get to still talk to people all day long, every day. I mean, Mondays are my busiest day, and I have almost 100 text messages from
Wow.
people just one day.
Yeah.
So I'm always talking to people. I'm always taking orders. I'm always helping people get what they want. And it's not all water fed. It's sometimes squeegees, scrubbers, whatever. But I get to be part of everybody's business a little bit instead of just focusing on one business. So I get a ton of new people, which is great because they'll ask questions and all of a sudden they get their first job and they send me this thing like, oh my gosh, and I get to almost relive that where, as you know, the longer you're in business, you almost get jaded. You get like, soft on the edges where it's like, yeah, I've been there, done that. Like, yeah, I've done $100,000 contracts. Like it's hard to get excited until you start with these new guys and you're like, dude, like this has changed my life. So I get to kind of have that. And that's really what gets me kind of going. It sounds dumb and corny, but you're able to have all those awesome experiences with a bunch of other people. And then you feel like you're helping.
Yeah, man. That's cool that your client used to be like a homeowner or someone that owns a small business. And now your client is the entrepreneur that's going out. It's really like someone buys scrubber squeegee from you. It's almost like a gift of entrepreneurship in the box. Like, hey, you forked up $200, got the good stuff. Now let's go spin that into $2,000 this next week and go get some jobs. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And this from the podcast that you do, you were at a certain point where you've asked people for help for a long time in the very beginning until you got to the point where somebody asked you and you're like, I know that question. All of a sudden you can help. And now being able to give that kind of back and do that is like just as exciting as like doing it yourself,
Yeah.
So it's really pretty cool to just kind of be able to experience that across the board in every different state and across the world. So it's kind of cool.
It's amazing. So let's go a little further, man, on WCR window cleaning resource. I want to know exactly, number one, what you guys do, what kind of products you have, and then two, in as much detail as possible, if you can describe who you guys are perfect for, if like the listeners doing this in revenue, this service located here, like just to answer kind of a little bit more meat and potatoes here.
Yeah, definitely. So we sell window cleaning supplies. We have 15,000 SKUs in our store. We sell not everything. I imagine there's certain things we probably don't, but we sell a lot, and we sell, the majority of window cleaning supplies sold in the country comes from us. So great numbers, great metrics. What that means is that our facilities and our staffing and our shipping especially is absolutely incredibly fast. So our big thing is we want to ship things the cheapest and the quickest to anybody in the country. That's kind of our big and ultimate goal. We have new warehouses. We have more content out there than anybody ever has. We're trying to help people as much as we are selling things. And it has the name Resource in our name. That's what we want to be, as a resource for people. So who we cater to is everybody. We have people who have those giant companies. We sell to people who have multi-million-dollar companies, but we also do startup companies all the time. That's one of our big niches, actually, is a new startup company, because when they go to find like, who sells window clean, they find us because of our marketing and everything that we do. And then we get to be able to help them from the very, very beginning and get them into maybe the right equipment and any orders. It doesn't matter size wise, but we do specialize obviously in a lot of pure water stuff because people are getting into the game for the first time, and we're able to kind of offer that stuff too. So it's pretty awesome there.
So cool, man. Do you see the avatar changing in the window cleaning industry? As far like when I got in, man, it's like the cleaners I would reach out to and see, they're like not to stereotype, but tended to be like some older dudes, right? Yeah. Like I was actually in Portland with my wife, and we're in Powell's Books, and I found this like 30-year-old window cleaning book, like How to Bid, and it was written by like some old dude. And so now what I'm seeing with social media, I think kind of there's a lot of flashy, sexy marketing to make X amount in this, when we kind of touched on that, but are you seeing the avatar be like, I'm all for younger folk in entrepreneurship. I'm just curious what you guys are seeing.
Yeah. So what's interesting about what you said is, it feels like 100 years ago, but when when WCR started, we started as a forum. And the concept at the time was dinosaurs die. And that sounds morbid, I know, but what it is that eventually those guys have been doing it forever. I do this and I can't change anything because they're set in their ways, and no harm, no foul on that. But those guys eventually decide to retire. They go on to different things. They move, they do everything else. And that new generation is what you're seeing now. And 100% true. We were always glorified janitors, but there was no real culture. What has changed over even the last 10 years is now, instead of just the glorified janitors that clean bird poop off windows, we actually are like super stoked at what we do. We sell skateboards with our logo on it. We sell, I don't have any in front of me, but we have more sticker ideas and custom things for everybody from magazine. We're finding now where it's like this thing where people are like, this is cool. Like, I'm part of this thing, as opposed to just, I'm an old guy. I've done this. I read that 30-year-old book. I know how to bid things because they told me that in black and white pictures. Like, we're having this whole new thing where it's a lot of young people. We're starting to see now this really big influx in the past probably year of guys that are like 14 years old getting into it. They're 13 and 14 saying, hey, I'm trying to do these things on the weekends or at night, and I think it's a cool thing. And you're just getting this new group of people in there. And with age comes hustle, right? So you're getting a lot of these guys who have these new age ideas. So they're having trucks that are wrapped that are crazier looking than anything ever before. This new gear that's out there. Guys are spending $350 on a bucket. Like, we have premium items too, where people are now taking this kind of to the next step where they're like, yeah, I'm going to treat myself to this $300 pole for traditional cleaning instead of a $60 one from Lowe's or Home Depot. So that trend's happening. People are becoming a little bit more invested in the culture and kind of invested in the experience. So it's pretty cool to see if you really block it out for the time.
Yeah, man, that's so good. And there's just so much like the good and bad education online, but there are some really good like resources like what you guys put out. And I know when I was like 18, man, I was trying to save up my way to get into college, and I literally put an ad up on Craigslist. This was like when Craigslist was kind of like new and weird. And so I remember painting a guy's trim on his house for like $300. And I took my Honda Civic, I got a gallon of paint at Home Depot, like a crappy paintbrush, and went and made like $300 less the cost of paint. And it's like, man, if there was internet now to YouTube and read some of you guys' stuff, it's just like, I wouldn't say it's like this generation maybe has it easier, but I think you have it like more educated and you can like launch properly, which is so cool.
Yeah, it's different. And this is going to make me sound like an old man. I promise. And this is not anybody who's listening, but the problem is now, because the internet is what it is, every question's answered. Every question you could ever have is out there. You have to ask the right question to find it. But now you start seeing a lot of people who, they get torn up in the forums anyway, in the Facebook groups, but they jump on and they say, as my light turns off here, but they say, hey, I need to know this. And it's a simple question. And instead of finding it themselves, they go, hey, give me all this information. Tell me this thing. Yeah. If you're the type of person who will go out there and find the information, it is 10 times easier now to start a business than it has ever been, because every answer is out there. It's put out there for public people. I've done almost 6 years of podcasts just on the business side of window cleaning. Like, if you go and listen, you have almost every answer you could possibly find. It's just getting those information now, where you start to get some of the younger people that come in and they just go, tell me everything. I don't want to find it, but if you're the one that will go find it, you're going to go far.
Yeah, man, there's a lovely thing called a search bar in a Facebook group, right? It's like, how much would you bid for this? Like, okay, yeah. I think people need to learn that, but no, man, that's so well said. Last two things, man, before you tell us how to reach out to you, I want to hear like one final piece of advice. Most of these listeners are listening. They're driving around. They're fighting the good fight. This is going to come out in the springtime of 2023. So, crazy economic year, maybe some uncertainty. Like, if you could rewind the clock to you sitting back in your truck driving around, like what would be one thing you're like, man, if this just like camp on this a little bit for today for the listeners, what would be kind of one imparting piece of advice?
Man, my biggest mistake to some degree was my level of seriousness, right? So I went longer than I should have without really going, wow, if I like lock down and do this like I am a CEO of a company, I can be a CEO of a company. Like the guy who is a CEO of Coca-Cola probably works, 60 hours a week. He's always working, he's always on it, he's always what that's why he is what he is. I got into this for the freedom, like most people do. And then as soon as they find out that they can start making money, they go make money instead of the freedom. It took me longer to do that transition than it could have. And I think that the way that your business compounds every year, if you go and really make 2023 amazing, 2024 will be even better than if you didn't make 2023 amazing. So getting that in, kind of taking it serious and really just living like nobody else now really kind of makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, man, I love that. And this thing, that because you were in business multiple years. The reference I use is a snowball, and the thing, it's hard to get that initial snowball pack, but once it's going, and it's pretty sweet packing snow, and it gets going down the hill and momentum, multiple years, don't quit and go back to the start. The thing will compound, and that's where it just becomes so cool, man. You create. Oh, yeah. That's why I love entrepreneurship. You create something out of nothing. It's just amazing.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome, man. Well, tell us, I'll link up in the show notes, but I want you to mention your podcast, man, because I've been going through some of those episodes and it is excellent. So I think if you can touch on that, and then just what would be a great way to maybe reach out to you, or for someone even to put an order. Maybe you guys got like a sweet offer or something you want to throw out on here. Tell us where we can learn some more.
Definitely. So my podcast is WCR Nation. It's anywhere podcasts are. You can find it there, even on YouTube. I also own American Window Cleaner magazine. So if you really want to nerd out, go get a magazine. It's print and shows up at your door. But if you want to call me and have me as your rep, that's what I do. That's how I make my cheddar. My number direct is 862-312-2026. That's my cell phone. So text me, call me. Check us out. It's windowcleaner.com. Nice and easy to remember. We are the greatest place to buy window cleaning supplies. We have the greatest staff because I'm part of it. But definitely check us out. I mean, there's no reason to shop anywhere else. We have everything. So
I love it, Jersey, man. You're hands-on, getting listeners to text you orders. I love that, man. That's you're not up in the C-suite, man. You're getting after it, touching, changing lives. That's great.
Yeah. It's a new age, man. It's Amazon,
Yeah. No, man, that's amazing. Well, thanks for being on, Jersey. We'll link up all the links, man. Thanks for dropping gold nuggets. And I'm going to make a note, man, to get you back on here. Maybe we'll do a part 2 and go a little deeper in marketing or something. I think would be fun.
Heck yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. I appreciate having me.